Hey guys, it's Michelle from Cozyegg, and today is Wednesday. I almost said February, May 26th, 2021. And this is episode 105. 105. So, thanks for joining. This is primarily a video about cross stitch. I'm gonna throw some books in at the end, and sometimes I talk about life stuff, and sometimes cats walk across the screen, so who knows, it'll be a surprise. But if you are a returning viewer, thanks so much for coming back. If this is your first time here, I hope that you see something you like, hear something you think is interesting, etc. So let's dig in, shall we? Because it has been like a month and a half since the last time I recorded. I kept meaning to, and then I just honestly couldn't couldn't scrounge up the energy to do it. So I have Tut here with me. I think Ramses has gone to the other room to supervise Eric, who is teaching a class. So, yeah. Not too much going on here life-wise, other than I kind of have a new job, maybe. So, So I'm a project manager by day, and so we have a team lead for our project management team. I do not directly report to her. I report to the same person she reports to. She recently turned in her notice. And so my boss called me and said, she has turned in her notice and I would like you to take over the team lead position since you've already been kind of doing it. So yeah, I guess I have a new job, but I don't know anything other than that, so we'll see how it goes. But there's that. It has been raining like crazy in Texas this time of year. We always have, well, not always, but we often have a lot of rain this time of year. And of course, every other person in Texas is complaining about it because they're like, I'm just tired of all this rain and I need to see the sun again, and it's just constantly, pouring, blah, blah, blah. And I'm over here like, yeah, it's raining. Yesterday morning it was thunderstorming and it was dark out, and I love it. I guess I'm the only one though. So, oh well. All right, so not much else going on other than that. But I have a ton to show you since it's been a minute. And I did lug it all in here, so Tut is sleeping on some of it. Okay, so let's talk finishes first, because I actually have some finishes. So I had been talking about these freebies from the Primitive Hair that are the Sabbats. And I stitched this one, Yule, a couple years ago, I guess. I stitched two of these actually. And one of them I made into an ornament and sent to a friend. So I stitched this a couple years ago, finished it with this flannel backing that I just love. And so these all call for, and they're available on the Primitive Hair website. You can go check them out. She has a bunch of great freebies, so you might tool around in there. But these are all charted for DMC. I kind of just chose my own colors and did them in overdyes. I loved that red. This was like a Needle Necessities red. And I just grabbed fabric. So I couldn't tell you what fabric this is, but I just grabbed something that I thought would look good. And so this one I did a couple years ago. Then last year, when we were first going through lockdown, I needed something like small and easy to stitch on because I just couldn't focus, and so these were the perfect thing. So I picked up in bulk and stitched it up. I couldn't tell you what fabric this is either, but I think this might have been like a 32 count possibly. This may have been like a 36, because all these are basically the same size, but this was probably a 28 or a 32 count. I did, again, my own color conversion. I actually used some Simply Wool, Gentle Arts Simply Wool threads to just give it, kind of a different feel to it. And that's one reason why I chose the bigger fabric to do it on, was so that I could use the wools. The sheep I did in Whisper, so he's fuzzy, which you probably can't tell, but he is fuzzy, and I liked the variegation in there. So in bulk I stitched, I guess, last March, and so I finally got around to finishing this, and here is the fabric that I put on the back. It just seemed kind of perfect for sort of the beginning of spring, and those flowers and plants kind of coming up out of the earth. So finally stitched this up, sewed this up. And then also last March I stitched Astara, which was the next one in the series. This is on an old silk weaver fabric. Couldn't tell you what the name of it is. Everglade, maybe? I think it's a 28 count. This just seemed like the perfect opportunity to use some of those, colored silk weaver fabrics that I have laying around that I never know what to do with, but I was in like their Fabric of the Month club forever. Back when silk weaver was like when you ordered fabric from them, you got it. So anyway, again, I did this in my own overdyed conversion, and I just kind of picked, whatever colors. The original, I think, calls for like a pink and a blue and a white and a brown, and I think that's it. I kind of threw this gray in here, and I stitched two of these as well. The other one is supposed to be an ornament for a friend, but I have yet to finish it. So anyway, that one I did stitch in the blue, pink, etc. I just did overdyes. But this one I just wanted to kind of pick some different colors. So the green overdye that I used here actually was a Gentle Arts limited edition thread that Abby, Top Knot Stitcher, included in one of my market orders. And so I just thought that was a perfect thing to use in here. And so I stitched this one up back in March of 2020. and then just recently finished this one as well. And here's the fabric that I used on the back, and I love it too. So these two, so this one was already done and finished, and it's been in my meditation space since then, and Eric keeps asking why it's still Christmas, but whatever. And then these two had already been stitched and just needed to be fully finished, which they are now. And then recently, you may recall, I stitched Beltane, also by Primitive Hair. And so this one I also did in overdyes, but I did, you know, a whole conversion to make it Feyre and Rhysand from A Court of Thorns and Roses, because they meet for the first time at Callan May, which corresponds with Beltane. So Callan May is Fire Night, which is Beltane. So there you go. And this one was also on an old silk weaver. I think this is also a 28 count. And I want to say the color is Jamaican Sunset, and so it just has this little sort of blush pink that you can see in there, which I really liked. And I did their crowns in Petite Treasure Braid, just to give them a little sparkle. So, and then the back of this has stars on it for obvious Night Court reference. But so this was stitched recently, and I also finally got it finished as well. And so now this one is in my meditation space, so I can enjoy it there. And so the next one is Litha, which is for summer solstice, which of course is June 21st. And so here's what that one looks like. And so I'm going to, I'll pick some fabric, kit this up. And again, it calls for, you know, like 5 DMCs, black, 640, which is that kind of beige gray, 832, 834, which are like a golden olive, and then a coffee brown, 938. So I will probably do this in overdyes as well, and who knows what fabric I'll choose. And one of the things that I have been doing also in my spare time is working on the Tudor Rose Sampler Guild website. I'm a member of the Tudor Rose Sampler Guild, and currently I am the membership chair. But last year, for our 20th anniversary, Eric and I built a website for the guild, and so, you know, we both kind of maintain it. I kind of maintain the content, and he kind of maintains all the other stuff. So one of the things that I have been doing is we started a blog back on Blogger in 2009, I think. And so when we went live with the website, we brought over everything from Blogger into the new blog. Some of it came over fine, some of it needed some help. And so I have been working on going back through the old posts. I'm back to 2014 now, so I've been going through the old posts and just sort of reformatting things, you know, making the photos a little larger, putting captions on photo, you know, that sort of thing. So as part of that, and here's where the segue is. So as part of that, I saw a post, one of the posts that I was doing, one of our members had stitched this, but she only stitched this part. And it was fantastic. I mean, just the bee and the crown. She may have done the flower too, I don't remember, but she sort of cut this off. And it really looked fantastic. So just to say, if you're not into, the sabots and you just like the design, nothing wrong with just cutting off part of it, stitching the part that you like. This made me think of Cynthia, my friend Cynthia, who has a bee wall, and I kept thinking I needed to show her this because she might need to stitch it for her bee wall. So this is Litha Summer Solstice. So like I said, I'm going to kit this one up. That'll be the next one I do, and I'm going to attempt to get it done, stitched, and fully finished before the summer solstice. We'll see if that happens. So, those were finishes, and then I have another big finish I want to show you. So you may recall that I have been, for dark 13 stitching every month, I have been pulling out Blacked Sky by the Primitive Needle and working on it. And here is the chart. Not that you care, because you're going to see this in a minute, but whatever. So Blacked Sky by the Primitive Needle. This is long out of print, but I stitched this on the called for fabric, which is 40 count vintage pear by Lakeside, and I stitched it with the called for threads, which were silks. The majority of them were pure palette silks, which I'd never used before, but Lisa, who is the designer, fell in love with them at market one year, and so that's what she chose to stitch this with. And then there's two silken colors, and so that's what I used, was the called for threads, the called for fabric. And this piece has been like my comfort stitching. Like, I started it one year during a time that I was having a really hard time, and there is just something about this piece. Part of it, I think that it was just the perfect marriage of linen and threads, and part of it, I think, was the design, because it is a morning sampler, and if you've been here for 30 seconds, you know that I'm hugely a fan of anything that is sort of dark and gothic and melancholy and romantic in that sort of dark way. I just can't get enough of it. So to stitch this morning sampler that in itself is kind of melancholy, but with the perfect materials, this just became my comfort piece. And so whenever I was having a hard time, I would get this piece out. I sort of dragged out my stitching on this because I wanted to savor every single stitch and I didn't want it to end. But I decided that it was finally time to finish it. And so I decided this year that for dark 13 stitching every month, I would just pull this out. I would work on it on the 13th and usually a few more days, after that. And that obviously worked really well. And so in April, I don't even know what month it is anymore. In April, I pulled this out for dark 13 stitching, and I stitched the last block and finished it. And actually finished it when I was on a Zoom stitching with some girlfriends that have become really important to me over the past year and a half, and they have meant a lot to me, and being able to finish this piece while with them, a piece that is so meaningful to me, was just kind of serendipitous. So without further ado, I'm going to show you my finish, and there it is. So this is Blacked Sky, and I'll be honest with you. When I finally finished it and took it off the Q-snap and ironed it, I was like, this is a lot smaller than I thought it was. But it's really beautiful. Really beautiful. And so let me see if I can give you a little bit of a close-up. So you can kind of see that. This fabric, sometimes I can get a good photo of it, sometimes I can't. It is quite green, which you would imagine being vintage pear, but it does have, because it's vintage pear, it does have a lot of that kind of, you know, antiqued, warm brown over dye to it. That's probably close to the color. It's maybe a little greener than that, a little warmer than that. But I just love everything about this so much, and it's just going to keep adjusting itself. So I made a couple of changes on purpose. There may be others that were not on purpose. So in this block, the silk, the pure palette silk that was this kind of terracotta color, the only problem that I have found with those silks, and it was only on a couple of them, but when you when you cut your length of, of thread and you separated it in two of my skeins, once you pulled out, the individual lengths of thread, it looked like the dye hadn't gotten all the way in there. And so it had some light spots to it, which in some cases didn't bother me. But here with this alphabet, it was making it really difficult to read the letters because of those, white spots in there. And so I ended up choosing a Verissois Soie d'Alger that was really close to that color, and I ended up replacing it with that. And I think it turned out really well. The other change that I made is that this black sun here had eyeballs. And I was like, yeah, no. Of course, what did I do? Quick, let me pull up and look and see what Emily did. Oh, Emily left off the eyeballs. I'm totally leaving off the eyeballs as well. Because I was like, I'm not feeling those eyeballs. But I really, really enjoyed this. And the verse, in case you cannot read it, says, "Our pleasures are born but to die. They are tied to our hearts but to sever, and like stars streaking across a blackened sky, burn their brightest when fading forever." So I love it so much. I love it so much. And I can't wait to have this framed, which may or may not be sometime in the near future. Probably not in the near future, but I'd really like to have this framed. So, yeah, big finish. And so let's just transition right into WIP, shall we? Because since I finished my dark 13 stitching piece for May's dark 13 stitching, I needed a new focus project. And so I decided to pull out, this is in my Alice in Wonderland bag from Christine Stitch All the Things. So, I don't know if I have a picture in here of what this whole thing looks like. So I decided to pull out a piece that I started a couple years ago for the solar eclipse. Yeah, I don't have it in here. And this is called The Moon Phases by The Little Stitcher. And I am stitching it on, I should probably pull this off of here so you can see the whole thing. I am stitching it on a, I think it's a 32 count fabric by Hand-Dyed Fabrics by Stephanie, called Midnight Tryst. And I went with a 32 count because there are beads on this, and so I wanted it to be, ooh, that's really kind of blowing that out and looking a little purple, which it is not. But it is a beautiful kind of royal midnight blue. Exactly what you would imagine Midnight Tryst looks like. So I decided that since this is relatively close to a finish, that this would become my new Dark 13 stitching focus, and hopefully after a few months I can get another one knocked off my list. So there are two versions of this. There is the full moon version and there is the new moon version, and I chose to do the new moon version. So the lady here in the center is in black, and the moon above her is the new moon as well. And you can see these spots here where the beads go, and a bead goes on their foreheads as well, with a little, you know, headband deal. So I think this called for DMC, if I'm not mistaken. I could look. I just chose some overdyed. So I'm using Weeks mascara. The white is called Picket Fence. And then I'm going to use, so there's some metallic on here as well, and I picked out a Petite Treasure braid, in fact the same one that I used on my Beltane piece, that silver. I don't have the beads yet. I need to think about, I think it just calls for white beads, and I'm thinking I'll probably put white beads on her dress, but for their headbands, I'm wondering if I put something else, a different color. I haven't decided. I did change the skin tone and the hair color of the two outer ladies because I felt like this needed a little diversity. So I decided this after I stitched the lady in the middle, and then I was like, I should stitch all of them different. So that's what I did. And so when I picked this up, basically I had the three ladies done, I had these two separating bars done, and I had most of these little doodads finished. So I did all the doodads around her. I did this line here. I did this bottom border. Some of it had already been stitched, but it looked really messy, you know, because 2 strands, white threads is like the kiss of death, right? So I ripped it all out and restitched all of this, and I'm much happier with it. And then I've started with the moon phases down here. So basically, I need to do the doodads here. I need to do the side border, bring this border across, finish the moon phases. Then there's another, you know, kind of one of these scallop borders underneath it. And then at the top, there's like a scallop border, and then it says the moon phases, and then I think there's another one at the top. So far, but so close. So, and I have my moon needle minder from Amy Baruch. It just seemed like the perfect thing. So I have that on here as well. So like I said, I picked this up. I probably worked on it 3 or 4 days. And it felt good to get this back out and make some good progress on it. Even though I had to do some ripping. But I was glad to be making some progress on something that had been kind of languishing, I'll say. I do tend to get this out for dark October stitching, but you know, it never gets more than a couple of days at best. So I'm like, I think this needs to come out, and let's see if we can finish it. So that's what I worked on. I was gonna see if this was DMC. And the skin tone and the hair of the two outer ladies is DMC. I used, I went to the Lord Libidon skin and hair color, you know, chart that he has, and I just picked some that I thought looked good. Yeah, this does call for DMC. So okay, and it does say it's finished with white and black beads. And it says to put the white beads everywhere except for on the tiara of the new moon, and on hers put a black bead. So I guess the other two are supposed to have white beads to go with their white dresses. I'll have to think about that. And it does, I don't think it calls for a metallic, but I'm putting metallic in there because why not? So, worked on that and made some good progress. And one of the other things, so I'm kind of in this, I really want to finish some stuff up and get things off my plate. And I don't think I mentioned this, but one of my goals is I have a ton of whips. I think currently I have 57, which is actually pretty good because it was up in the 60 somethings. So when I did that massive, like, you know, weed through all of my whips, and I got rid of some things, and I UFO'd some stuff, and just, you know, said I'm not doing this. There's a few things I want to restart, but I'm not restarting them anytime soon. But when I went through that, that's when I kind of weeded out a bunch of stuff. But I think my cat is snoring. I decided at the beginning of the year that one of the things that I really would like to do is to be under 50 whips by my birthday, which is in August. I'm at 57, so, and really, I started the year, I've started 2 things this year. One of them was the Beltane piece, which I started and finished. One of them was Sarah Ann Bannon. which obviously is not finished yet. And then of course I finished Black and Sky. So whatever that math works out to be. But I figure that's 7 projects to finish by August. We'll see how I do. So I thought, now that I've finished Black and Sky, slotting in, something else to Dark 13 stitching to focus on was a good plan. I also have this other piece that has been hanging around far too long for the amount that's left on it. So this is From the Deep by Plum Street. This is an old chart. But when I decided that I wanted to stitch this, of course I couldn't find it anywhere. And so I put a plea out to Instagram, and a very nice stitcher offered up her copy of it for me and sent it along, which I super appreciated. So the reason that I really wanted to stitch this is because I have a round pewter frame that has basically a seashell pattern on the outside that I would love to put in my bathroom, which has kind of mermaids and sea stuff and whatever. It's kind of tropical looking in there. And I really wanted to put something in that frame that would kind of go in there. And so when I saw this mermaid, I was like, I think that's the perfect thing. So I basically drew myself a little circle template so that I knew what size that frame was. Template. And started stitching it. So I have this horrendous 40 count lamb's wool, which is like the worst fabric in the world to stitch on. It is so stiff and horrible. But it's the perfect thing to stitch a full coverage piece on. So I stitched the mermaid and some of her seaweed, and you can see I've got my basting line there of kind of where I need to be. And now I'm just doing the fill-in of the background, which is not a ton of fun, but it's the perfect thing to pick up when I'm, on a Zoom call or whatever. So I've been putting, like a length or 2 in of this every time I pick it up. And I had my EGA meeting last night on Zoom, so I picked this up and worked on it while we were on there. And I've been trying to kind of just, like, I have Quilt Guild tomorrow night, so I'll probably pick this up and work on this a little bit there and just try to get the rest of this filled in, because I think this will be, one, relatively easy to finish, because there's really nothing left but that background. And then once she's finished, that's one more thing knocked off my list. Plus, then I will get to enjoy her in my bathroom with my mermaid sculptures. So that is the other thing I've been working on. And I'm gonna have to kind of re-situate myself. I had another Zoom stitching with another group of friends, and I think I mentioned that I decided that I would work on my chatelaine, one of my chatelaines, when I get together with them, because most of them are chatelaine stitchers. And so it just seems like the perfect thing to work on when I'm with them. And so I got out my Egypt Garden mandala again, whenever we met, which was either end of April or beginning of May. I don't remember. I think it might have been beginning of May. And I managed, so I've got 3 sides finished. These are stems of basically lotus flowers, I think. And then I just have one more side to do. And I completely finished the inside, all that over one stitching with the fish. It's got 4 big fish and 4 baby fish. And you can see where I've marked which way is up so that I don't get confused. Plus I have my beautiful Egyptian needle minder that Emily gifted me. So I'm stitching this on Days Gone By fabric from Silk Weaver, old Silk Weaver. I don't think it looks like this anymore. But I got it because I wanted it to kind of look like sand, and one of the other ladies that was stitching this at the time that it came out did it on Days Gone By, and I just loved it. So that's what I had to stitch it on. And this is some silks, some metallics, some DMC, and then a butt ton of beads and crystals. So, but I'm always happy when I can make a little progress on this, finish that center, got another side done. So I can't wait to get some more progress in on this. And that lives in my Egyptian bag, my Momily bag. And as you can see, there's lots of silks, lots of metallics, lots of DMC. This one actually has a lot more DMC than some of her others, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that, but pretty. So, yeah, so I worked on that. This one I started for my birthday a couple years ago, so it's been nice to get it back out and work on it a little bit. See if I can, I don't know if that's gonna stay. All right, and so then that brings me to Sarah Ann Bannon, which has been my focus piece. And Sarah is the sampler that I reproduced for the Tudor Rose Sampler Guild at the end of last year for our 20th anniversary. So that's the antique of Sarah. And I did both a reproduction and an adaptation. And so this is what I have primarily been working on. And I'm really enjoying her. I don't know what that is. I've been really enjoying her, and I haven't really wanted to put her down other than, you know, for Dark 13 stitching, of course, I have to participate in that. And then, you know, one day a month that I work on Egypt Garden. So I am stitching her with the Versoix silks. I have the DMCs in here as well, just for reference. So, and I've made a ton of progress on her. I am just about to the halfway point. I'm not going to take her completely off the Q-snap, but I am going to take the top off so that you can see the top part. No, don't come this way. Stay over there. Okay, so I am stitching Sarah on 40 count weeks putty, which is not quite that green. That's probably closer, and that's where I'm at. So it's a little hard to see because it's curving, but that top part has, you know, the over one verse and those two beautiful red striped bases that I just love. And then the carnation band, these crazy satin stitch motifs. I don't know what they are other than potentially alien spaceships. And then I moved down and did, you know, this big flower basket, which I just love. This was a lot of fun to stitch. And you can see I have outlined the basket, but I am in the process of filling it in. So what Sarah did on these vertical lines, these diagonal lines, is she did this weird stitch where it was like over one, down two. So there are thin, tall stitches in order to get this angle, because there's no way to do it doing it over one or over two, and it took forever to figure that out. But so those two bands with the diagonals are filled in the same way, and so it gives you a really interesting look, but it does take a good bit of time to do that. So I'm kind of just filling in, you know, a little bit here, a little bit there. And then this week I have been working on the bird, and so I got the bird done. He does have a mix of over one, over two, and, you know, the weird over one horizontally, down two vertically. And I just really love how he looks. And there's a bird on the other side, which I obviously haven't stitched yet, that is different than he is. So I'm anxious to work my way over there. And you can see here too that, you know, all of the flowers in this border, other than, you know, the color of their petals, are all exactly the same, except for that one. And when I got to that point in the chart, I was like, wait a minute. Did I use the wrong symbol here? And so I went back and looked at my reference photos, and no, I did not. That is accurate. Sarah just decided to do her own thing here. So I think it's rather interesting, though, just having that one flower that's different. So, and then last night I stitched this little demon squirrel with the red eye. And that, like, right underneath him is basically the halfway point. So there's a couple of motifs here. You can see I've started one here. There's a couple motifs here, and then I'm going to move over to the other side and start filling in, and of course continuing to work on filling in the basket. So that's where I'm at, and I love it. Love it. I just think she is so pretty, just really pretty. And like I said, I'm really enjoying working on her. I started her on January 1st, and I'm not a super speedy stitcher, obviously, but she's been my primary focus stitch since then, and I'm just really enjoying her quite a bit. So she will continue to get attention, until she's finished. And so that's really what I have been working on. I did, of course I mentioned last time, and it may not have been information that was interesting to everyone based on the thumbs down that I got, but I did talk a little bit about, having to correct some of the errors in the chart, and some things that I learned, etc. And as part of that, because of some of the things that I learned with correcting that chart and kind of changing the formatting on it, I did go back and look at my La Luna chart, which is my original design that I released a couple years ago. And so I, just for reference, decided to bring her here. Stop trying to come over here. So this is La Luna. This is my own design under Cozyegg Designs. I did this as a box top, as you can see, and it's a Luna moth with 3 moons. Very, beautiful design, beautiful fabric, if I do say so myself. And so the reason that I put this on a box top, and I decided when I stitched it that that was my intention, was I wanted it on a box top because I wanted a place to put my tarot cards. And I do have some crystals in here also, but this is my deck that I use most of the time. And so I wanted a place to put that. And I put some batik fabric on the inside of the top, and then there's also batik fabric on the bottom that kind of matches this fabric. And so I went back and I looked at this chart, and because it was my first chart, and like I said, I've learned some things since then. I don't think that the original chart was as readable as I would have liked it to be. And part of that was because I was trying to get it on one page. Because I am a little frugal with my printing. And so I figured others might be as well. But I think I, sacrificed readability for it being on one page. So I have actually gone in and I have revamped the chart a little bit, and I think it's much easier to read. I'm pleased with the way it looks now. So if you are someone that has purchased La Luna previously and you haven't stitched it yet, I think only a couple people have, but if you haven't stitched it yet, or even if you have stitched it, and you would like a copy of the updated chart, please send me an email at sales@cozyeggdesigns.com, and then I will send you the updated chart. If you can't remember that email address, you can just go to my Cozyyeggdesigns.com website, and there's a contact form there. So, but I'm pleased with the way that the new chart looks. So I wanted to just mention it, and for anybody, because I know it's disappointing when you purchase a chart and then you look at, the actual pattern itself and you're like, this is going to be hard to do. I don't think it was that unreadable, but it definitely could have used some improvement. So if you want the new chart, just let me know. All right, so that's La Luna, and hopefully she will be graced with some new chart companion soon. All right, so I think that's it for the stitching. So I'm going to talk about books if you're interested in hanging out for that. And then we'll wrap up. So, books. Most of what I have read in the past month and a half has been ebooks. So I'm going to kind of pull up the covers on my trusty iPad just so that I can keep myself honest. All right, so when last we met, I was reading this series that I cannot stop reading because, oh my God, the cliffhangers. Every freaking book ends in a cliffhanger, and then you have to read the next one. So this is, Thrall of the Vampire King by Bella Klaus. I think this might have been book 4, possibly. These covers are ridiculous, so whatever. But obviously they're vampire books, which is my thing. So, you know. They're not bad, but I am annoyed that I have to continue to go to a different book because of a cliffhanger. Like, these really could have all been one book, I think, honestly. But whatever. All right, so Thrall of the Vampire King, read that. I think that was my current read the last time we talked. And I picked that book up right after I finished reading A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. So I read this, which was the new release. I read Thrall of the Vampire King, and then I read this again because it was that good. And it was just as good, if not better, the second time. So I have no chill with this series, none whatsoever. So basically, I read this, 700 something page book twice in 3 weeks with a book in between. So this is so good. Anyway, all right, so Thrall of the Vampire King. Then I read A Court of Silver Flames again. And then I read Passion of the Vampire King. This one was probably the worst one so far. There wasn't a whole lot to it. Like, it was just sort of continued stuff. So that one got a 3-star for me. I'm usually pretty hefty on the 4 stars. This one got a 3-star. It probably should have gotten a 2-star, but whatever. So I read this. I've been sort of using these as palate cleansers. Like, I read a good book, and then I read one of these, and then I read a good book, and then I read one of these. So be it. So after I read this, I was trying to decide what I wanted to read next. And so I did a little poll on Instagram with the 2 books that I was kind of feeling drawn to. So one of them was Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. Obviously, we all know now that I'm a huge fan of Sarah J. Maas. Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood is the first in a new series that she's doing. The next book is supposed to be out in January 22, I think. So it was between that or rereading the Fever series so that I could read the new book by Karen Marie Moning. And that first book, I think, is called Dark Fever, if I'm not mistaken. So I put a little poll up, and it was overwhelmingly in favor of Crescent City. So once I finished Passion of the Vampire King, I picked up Crescent City. Now, just for comparison's sake, this is A Court of Silver Flames. This is Crescent City. Court of Silver Flames is 757 pages-ish. Crescent City is 799 pages. So it's like 40 pages. This is 40 pages longer than this. Let's talk about page thickness, shall we? Because this has these paper thin, like obviously paper thin, but like tissue paper thin pages. This has nice, hefty, heavier weight paper. 750, 799. Mind blown. Anyway, so I read this. I was a little afraid to read it, I will be honest with you. Because as much as I love the A Court of series and the fact that I just reread them again, and I read A Court of Silver Flames twice, I was a little afraid that this was not going to hold up. I was wrong. This book is excellent. Absolutely fantastic. It is so good. Ann P. commented on my post and said that Crescent City is grittier. And that was like the perfect description for it. This is much grittier. And the world that it takes place in, you know, is sort of modern day, but with, you know, fantasy elements thrown in there. So they have cars and cell phones, you know, that sort of thing. But the main character, Bryce, is a total badass. And I loved her. Absolutely loved her. So while this has, you know, a lot of fantasy elements to it, if you're not into like super hardcore fantasy stuff, you might give this one a try. It's so good. So good. And so this is The House of Earth and Blood. And the next book, which I think is called The House of Skie and Breath. So good. So good. And this book was gifted to me by my dear friend Annette, and I am forever thankful to her because, wow, so good. So good. Yes. So then, of course, I needed another palette cleanser. And so then I read Rebirth of the Vampire King because I can't quit these. So this is book 7. I finished it this morning. Sorry, this is book 6. I finished it this morning. There is one more book. This one got another 3-star because I don't know if we're just going downhill from where we started or what, but the last one and this one have not been that great. And so then this afternoon I decided I was going to check out something from the library. I've been kind of continuously looking at the library for ebooks. They have some things that I would like to read, but the things that I would really like to read right now, they don't have. For example, I really want to read From Blood and Ash, like that trilogy. They don't have it. But I decided to check out White Hot Kiss, which is also by Jennifer Armentrout. I think this is an older book of hers. I think this is also a trilogy. And the series is called The Dark Elements. So I'm here in my reading journal in day 1. Yep. So I'm going to give this a try, see how it is. It's got mixed reviews. I'll report back. But the other thing is I saw the commercial on TV that the second season of Discovery of Witches is coming to AMC on June 27th. So I was like, I should probably get on it and read the second book before I watch the second season. So I don't have the second book. I read Discovery of Witches twice, but I don't have the second book. So, of course, I went out to the library to check, and they have the first book, the third book, the fourth book. For what ungodly reason, they do not have book 2 in ebook or audiobook. 1, 3, and 4, no 2. So I was left with no choice but to purchase one. So it is on its way to me as we speak, hopefully. I ordered it yesterday. So my plan is when that comes, that'll be the next thing that I read because I want to have it read before I start watching the second season of the series. And speaking of TV shows, if you've not been watching The Nevers, you need to watch it. I think it's on Prime. I don't have Netflix or any of that crap. So I just have Prime. It's so good. So good. Olivia B. and I kind of joke that we were the only 2 people watching it, but needless to say, it's really good. It's evocative of the original Penny Dreadful, which you know is my heart and soul. It has a little bit of The Alienist, which is also a good series and a good book series if you're interested. But I really like the way that they've done the television series. It's excellent. So it's a little Alienist. It's a little Penny Dreadful with some steampunk thrown in there. So it's really worth watching. I highly recommend it. So if you get the opportunity, go and watch The Nevers. Well worth it. So I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. So I'm gonna try this new book out. I'll report back on how that is. I'm gonna continue to work on Sarah Ann Bannon and try to get a little farther on her. I'm happy that I am almost to that halfway point. Because below that there's like an Adam and Eve and deer and grass and all kinds of interesting things. So I'm looking forward to that. So that's all I got. Again, if you need an updated chart of La Luna, please don't hesitate to reach out, sales@CozyEggDesigns.com. And in the meantime, keep stitching. Thanks for checking in. I appreciate it. And sorry that it's been so long. It's just been one of those things, you know, just one of those things. So thanks for checking in, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.